We moored up under the Schwedenbrücke, ready to explore this fascinating city, the remnant of a once great empire, the origin of so many movements which shaped European culture in our century. Everyone must have dreamt a little about Vienna, and as night fell, I strolled off into the city to discover some of its hidden, mysterious charms, and to see if my dreams were true. When all is said and done, it must be easy to fall in love with a city that invented the croissant. This was how we had approached Vienna, down the Danube and then onto the Donauwasser, which runs right into the city centre. The Danube itself merely skirts Vienna. Wien, as it's called, is built on a miserable little stream of the same name, which now runs mostly underground, where it starred in a great film. But more of that later. We'd moored the Leo under the Schwedenbrücke. Central Vienna is a maze of tiny streets, so the Habsburg emperors built a road around it, the famous Ringstrasse. Ray and I circumnavigated the city by tram. Vienna, like London, was built to be the hub of an empire. Until the end of the First World War, the Austrian Empire included modern Hungary, Czechoslovakia and Yugoslavia, all governed from this city. And, like London, the grandeur of the buildings remained long after the empire had disappeared. Vienna likes to remind you of its glorious past as much as it possibly can. Perhaps this is because the Viennese themselves are extremely conservative. One writer at the turn of the century said that listening to the Viennese made you feel you ought to leave at once, but no one ever did. The Viennese, he said, grumble and whinge, but they stay where they are. They do nothing to change Vienna or themselves. Anyone who tries to do so is a mortal foe. He summed up the Viennese as an extremely unhappy people, hating Vienna but unable to live without it. St. Stephen's Cathedral. Somebody once said Viennese cafes had two great advantages, that you weren't at home and you weren't in the fresh air either. In the good old days, the cafes were more than just a place to eat and drink. They were a way of life. In these smoky, crowded rooms, philosophers and artists, politicians and writers prattled over their coffee and strudel. You could even have your mail delivered to your favourite haunt. The Spurl was one of the greatest cafes of them all. At the Spurl, I met an old friend, Otto Plaschkis, a filmmaker who'd been born in Vienna.
I realised this place 70, 80 years ago was probably packed full of students and doctors of philosophy and artists of various kinds. And here we are, 1988, empty. The Vienna before the First World War and the Vienna between the wars, though clearly it was a different Vienna, had a certain spark, a certain energy. Not a great deal of energy about. So I think it's old people reminiscing about the past and how nice it was to live or be ruled by a Kaiser. I don't think there's subversive talk that goes on in the coffee houses. I don't think so. Vienna at the turn of the century was described, and has been described, as the kernel of modern art. And whether that's the combination of Freud and Wittgenstein and Mahler and all of that. But there was something in the air, what the Austrians call a Zeitgeist. There was something about Vienna. Why did it produce so many artists at the time that it did?
I wanted to visit Ottmar Lang's violin workshop. Vienna is still famous for music, not because it has any great composers left, but because it has so many good players. Ottmar Lang has the exclusive contract to repair all the stringed instruments of the great Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra. These are no ordinary instruments, as you might guess. Lang and his team work with much the same tools and methods as Stradivarius, which is just as well because this is where 6 Stradivariuses like to be cured.
Take Ihnen hier einmal den Unterschied einer Wiener Geige. Sie sehen hier den schwarzen Lack. Das ist so ein spezielles Kennzeichen. Hohe Wölbung und auch die F-Löcher klein, nach Steiner gearbeitet noch. Und auch eine zierliche, kleine, schöne Schnecke. Das ist so das Wiener Instrument. Und hier haben wir dann ein italienisches Instrument. Wir sehen das breite Modell, die flache Wölbung. Dann auch hier das F-Loch, ganz etwas anderes. Das ist eben hier die große, kräftige Schnecke des italienischen Instruments. Dagegen hier das kleine, zierliche Köpfchen der Wiener Geige. Das ist eben das Spezielle an dieser Sache. Ja, die besten Violinen kommen aus Cremona und man sieht hier an diesem Stammbaum, wie diese Geigenbauer sich entwickelt haben, von Andreas Amati hinauf zu Hieronymus, Antonius, Nikolaus Amati, Antonius Stradivari und dann die ganzen Schüler, die man also hier dann bekommen hat, die auch weggegangen sind von Cremona nach Venedig und Brescia und so und sich der Geigenbau in Cremona entwickelt hat.
One of the main reasons I wanted to make my trip to Vienna was to see where Carol Reed had made his famous film masterpiece. Remember the Third Man and Harry Lime. Orson Welles was Lime and Joseph Cotton was his friend Holly Martins. Following in the footsteps of the film characters, I disappeared through this hole in the pavement, down into the sewers beneath the city. Do you remember the theme tune played on a zither? In the film, it was down here that Holly Martins had to shoot his friend Harry Lime. It was a lot less smelly than I'd expected. Full marks to the Emperor Franz Joseph, who'd had the sewers built. I could hear the rush of water, the sound of the little river Vien scouring out the city on its way through to the mighty Danube. It's typical of Vienna's confidence that it could build such a magnificently imperial lavatory to match its sewers.
It's a very beautiful lavatory you've got here.
Thank you.
It's also typical of the city to have selected Paula to run it. She used to be in show business, and now she's turned this convenience into a star turn.
Architect Laws.
Yes?
Yes.
Can we see through here?
Yes, please, sir. Go ahead.
Thanks. I'll jump into this.
In most public lavatories, you have to pay to open the door. The great trick here is that you have to pay to shut it.
Should come again.
I wanted to show Ray one of the last preserved restaurant cars from a great old train which had been the setting for a film I'd once produced, Murder on the Orient Express. In its day, as far as crossing Europe in style went, this train would have been the only serious rival to the Leo.
This is alive, isn't it?
It's really, really nice. It's,
Do you know, it's such a funny thing happened to us when we were making the film, Murder on the Orient Express. We went to see Paramount Pictures, and the head of that was a man called Charlie Bluedorn. And we weren't quite sure whether he'd have heard of the Orient Express, and we went in and said, we want to make the Orient Express. He said, oh yes, I remember that. It's a train, isn't it? I used to be a waiter on Vienna Station, and I remember it coming through, and how glamorous it was and so on.
yeah. So you associate with that?
So they gave us the money.
I was telling Ray about a man who'd come down to the Leo the day before and said he had a boat himself in England. He turned out to be the principal of the Conservatory of Music, and he'd asked us to come and spend the afternoon with him there. While I was talking, my attention was irresistibly drawn to a passing motorcyclist and his best friend. This beauty was quite obviously on her way to the conservatory as well.
Vienna classic period, therefore.
Yes. It's Haydn.
Haydn, Mozart, Beethoven.
Beethoven. Well, that's
Of course, they are not all born in Vienna. You know, nobody of these three has been born in Vienna. But in Austria, Mozart and Haydn, but Beethoven came from Bonn, from Germany.
What happened to the music in the war? I mean, did they keep the orchestras going, or?
Yeah, that's the things that only in Vienna can happen, I think. It was a hard war, as you know, and a very rigid political system here. But, for example, the Philharmonic Orchestra of Vienna was exempt of all political things, of military things. They had not to go to the army, and so they could play their concerts up to the nearly last days of the war.
Really?
Yes, and the Russian army has not been so far away from Vienna, and still we had concerts here.
There are a large number of Oriental students who come here to learn to play in the best approved Vienna style.
Very nice. And you've been here 3 years, you said?
Yes, I studied already 2 years in Germany and then 3 years.
3 years here, and you're hoping to get a job here in Vienna?
Yes.
Is that your dream?
No, in the Philharmonics only take men, and the symphonics even don't like women so much.
Is that really true?
Yes.
It's
and even with horn, because there's power to need.
Yes, and they won't take women?
They have some, yes.
But it's a bit chauvinistic, that, isn't it?
Yeah, you have to be very much better than the men.
Yes?
So they will take you.
No, which one did you do last week, the loudest?
The second one, then. It was
Die Steine.
Yeah, yes, of
Die
course. But
Steine were the biggest because the
das
millstones.
Wandern, hieß das?
In fact, the school is thoroughly international. Here, a Swedish tenor is being put through his Schubert by an American tutor.
What did Schubert write?
Nothing.
Yes, he did. Piano.
Yeah.
Piano. That
Yes,
means,
yes, of
and
course.
that's usually what you take for the
Yeah.
first verse.
Yeah.
What you do the other verses with a strophic song. That you can change.
Das Wandern ist des Müllers Lust, das Wandern. Das Wandern ist des Müllers Lust, das Wandern.
And my second half, I am a British sailor, you see.
I see, yes, yes, like
I'm
us.
very proud to have a certificate as British Yachtmaster Ocean.
Really?
Yes, and we built up with English friends a company and own a big sailing vessel, a three-mast schooner.
Yes.
We keep her in East England in Hartlepool. And every year, in all the summer holidays and winter and Christmas and Easter, we are there.
Really?
Yeah, that
so you go frequently?
Yeah. I can tell you a secret, if you want. The secret is I am much more expert in navigation than in counterpoint.
I have a present for you on my boat. We bought a very large red ensign to cross the channel, but it's too big for our boat. And I think it'll be just the right size for you, so we'll present it to you as a
That is
as a
very, very
token.
nice, really.
They say that the East begins in Vienna. Even hundreds of years ago, it was a good launching pad for crusaders on their way to the Holy Land to rescue it from the infidel.
And in that crusade, the Austrian Duke, the Babenberger Leopold V, took part in that crusade together with the English King Richard and the German Emperor Friedrich Barbarossa. And they had hard to fight, and finally they conquered the fortress of Echo, that's in today's Palestine. And then they had a quarrel. The Austrian Duke and the English king. The story goes that the Austrian Duke hoisted the Austrian flag, that's red, white, red, on the top of a tower. The Austrian Duke, Leopold V, had conquered himself with the Austrian knights. And the English king, who was a young, proud and ambitious man, he saw that and he felt him, the leader of that crusade, and he didn't allow the Austrian Duke to hoist that flag, and so he tore down the Austrian flag, because he said to Leopold V, it's only me to put the flag on the top of the tower, because I'm the king and you're just a duke, you're some ranks under me and that's not allowed. And so he offended the Austrian duke, who left the crusade. And some month afterwards, Richard also wanted to sail back home, and his ship sank in a terrible gale in Italy. It was near today's Venice, and so he tried to cross Austria. He had to cross Austria. It was the only way to go to Bavaria, to his relatives. He was disguised as a pilgrim, but in a small village near Vienna. He was found out. He hasn't got Austrian money, only money from the Eastern Roman Empire. And so he was suspected to be the English king. Then they caught Richard and put him into the prison of Dürnstein. Richard had to stay there for 3 months. The English did not know the whereabouts of Richard, and so they sent Blondel out to have a look for him. And so the story goes that Blondel was sailing down the Rhine and the Danube River, singing a song which only he knew and his king. And as he sang the song in front of the castle of Dürnstein, he heard a man singing with him the second stanza. And so he found out that Richard was incarcerated up there, here in Dürnstein. He went back to England to collect the money, because the English had to ransom the king. They had to pay at about 35 tons of silver to get Richard free.
I'd always wanted to know the right way to kiss a woman's hand, and Vienna was the place to discover the truth.
Well, why is that?
Well, usually it's better to announce your intentions, otherwise the opposite party will not know what is going to happen, so she can prepare herself already. Now I want to demonstrate the Handkuss. Let's say I am now going to approach you to say hello to you in the Viennese manner. Scott, kiss the hands.
Scott.
This is the way it should be done. The hand of the lady, if you would give me again, is slightly raised, but not too far. And the man is bowing like that, and he stays about 1 centimeter above the hand, depending on the length of the nose, of course.
In 1683, the King of Poland saved Christendom by defeating the Turks outside the walls of Vienna, thanks to some quick-witted bakers who'd heard the enemy trying to dig a tunnel. As a reward, the bakers were allowed to sell a new type of roll made with butter in the shape of a Turkish crescent. Marie Antoinette, who was Viennese, missed these special rolls terribly when she got to Paris and sent for an Austrian baker to teach the Parisians how to make them too. They became known as croissants and immensely popular. Perhaps that's what she meant by saying let them eat cake. One of the strangest things I discovered about Vienna is that its most romantic symbol, the Ferris wheel, had been made in England. The huge cast-iron construction had been brought out from Bolton bit by bit and has survived almost intact to this day. All this coffee housing was getting to Ray, who liked to keep in trim, so he arranged for us to go on a bicycle tour of the city. On we cycled past the Belvedere Palace, which was built on the site of the Turks' defeat and became the residence of the emperors. We zoomed past the church of I don't know what, but I was really intrigued by the sight of an English telephone box. No time to stop. Our incredibly fit tour leader whisked us on past the Parliament building and the opera, where we rather feebly stopped to catch our breath. All this biking made everyone hungry, so we had them all back for a Leo lunch.
Please stop. You must stop. Salad.
All too soon the good times were over. Winter was coming. Reluctantly we had to leave Vienna. We were bound for the shipyard at Neuburg. It had rained hard in the mountains, hundreds of miles away, and everyone was making extremely slow progress against the swollen river, even the big boys. It was just as well that the good Captain Froelich had so many friends. Before long he had fixed us up with a lift from an Austrian coal barge. It had a 2,500 horsepower engine and probably didn't even notice the difference when the Leo was tied alongside. I presented the captain with something for the other leg. We waved goodbye to the coal barge that had helped us and struggled into the shipyard at Neuburg. It was Auf Wiedersehen to Captain Froelich, and I really hope I do see him again. She was laid up, battened down and shipshape, and there we left her, left Vienna, at least until our adventures could begin again. For the Leo, Ray and me, it had been the journey of a lifetime.